All right, today we are trying something new, and I have two guests. I have Brian Anderson-Needham. He's the owner and operator of Weapon Brand and Combat Athlete Performance Academy, which we'll get to hear a bit about. And Jamie Anderson, she's the CEO of Weapon Brand. So before we get started into how you both started the company itself, let's get a little bit of background for both of you. So Brian, let's start with you as a fellow veteran. I'm going to give you the first shot.
Awesome.
Talk a bit about your background, where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Well, I'll do that, but I first have to start by saying Jamie isn't just the CEO of Weapon Brand; she's actually a co-owner. So
Oh, yeah.
I had to make sure she threw that out there, just because I would have heard about it tomorrow, guaranteed. So,
I'd kick his butt.
but yeah, so my career actually started with going into the Marine Corps, and I spent some time doing a bunch of, as you know, Jeremy, being part of the military, a bunch of weird things in the Marine Corps, and being a part of a lot of operations, and Operation Iraqi Freedom was probably one of the most major. And then I actually got to the point where I was doing both at the same time, working for the state of Ohio and in the Marine Corps. Finally gave up that career, concentrated on my career in the state of Ohio, and from there I did a ton of more weird things with the state of Ohio. So, which actually led me into what we're doing today. But a lot of this stuff was law enforcement based. I worked a lot with corrections, parole, and a lot of state highway patrol for the state of Ohio, and a lot of local municipalities as well. So did a lot of weird stuff.
That's interesting. So what, I'm going to ask this, what made you go in the Marines? The Marines of all things, right?
Oh man, this is this is a pretty funny story. I was late to high school on a Friday, and I was very normally not late, and when I showed up that day, I happened to be late on a Friday, which I had a football game that night, and I was met by my coach, my head coach, and he saw me, and I just felt my whole heart drop, and I'll never forget this. And he gave me that look of disgust, and he just gave me this come with me type thing, and he took me to it was a study hall that they were using as a test taking classroom. And he said, "Go in there, talk to that teacher, tell her that that I brought you here, and you need to take that test." And I had no idea what the test was. Well, it turned out to be the ASVAB. So he got me out of being late and not missing starting or the first quarter of the game at least. And I took that test, and surprisingly, I did pretty well, did really well actually. And so I started to get these calls from recruiters, and looked into some things, and I thought, man, uh, what's the most difficult one that I could do? Well, it's the Marine Corps, and I have no idea why, other than I was always up for the challenge, and I did that, and I took it. Now my family wasn't the happiest, because I was I had letters to go uh, possibly wrestle or play ball for different colleges, and when I went to the Marine Corps, they were just kind of like, "Oh man, jaw dropping," right? So I did that, and if I didn't do that, I really honestly don't think we'd be where we are today.
Hmm. That's really interesting. And then how did you get involved with the state of Ohio? Was that through your military affiliation or just some
Yeah,
other?
yeah, it was primarily. So it's funny, because literally the same exact day that I got offered the job for the state of Ohio, I was also offered the job for Columbus Police Department, and I took the job with the state, thinking, just hearing different people saying, with the state, you're going to have more opportunities, you're going to move up faster, you could travel all over, and I did. I mean, they just, the state of Ohio really took care of me. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there, especially in the profession that we were in, Jeremy. Law enforcement, and that type of a field. It's really unforgiving a lot of times. But I will tell you, the state of Ohio really took care of me. And my career was, I had my dream job before I resigned from the state. I had a professor one time, and he said, if I could wave a magic wand, what would you be doing tomorrow for your dream job? And I ended up doing that.
Wow.
So yeah, I absolutely love my job, but it was a little bit dangerous at times, and then a little wild. But man, I love doing it. And once again, if I didn't do that, we would be where we are today.
That's amazing. All
Now
right.
he's
So
I
Jamie,
don't even let him eat. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And keep this in mind, Jerry. I ate whenever I went. As a matter of fact, not only did I eat, but the state paid for my meals every day. So
nice.
my meals were provided, right, either through funding or they provided a meal at my academy. And now I can't. Now not only do I not get to eat, but I don't even get paid.
What a big transition, but we'll get into that. I'll be very
he
interested to hear
gets to work
how
with
you
me.
do that.
So
That is true. That's the gold of it. That's the gold of it, right?
So Jamie, what about you? Where did you start out? What's your background in your career journey?
um I've kind of had a few, but I started out in college. I got hired on as a mortgage broker. I didn't even know what a mortgage was when I took this job, and I wasn't smart enough at the time. There was no internet to like look up what's a mortgage. My parents never talked about a mortgage, so I was like, I'll just, you know, give it a shot because I was still in college. And it actually turned out to be a really great job, but super stressful. So that was in Ohio where I grew up and went to college. And then I moved to California to Los Angeles and ended up being in media sales my entire time there. I was there for 17 years and I sold print, magazines, newspapers, and then I went into radio when I left, which was a really fun job. But I left radio and started my own ad agency, which I still have today, doing traditional media like radio, TV, outdoor, print, events, things like that. And I never wanted to get in the digital space because it's always changing so quickly. And I've always outsourced all of that work. Well, starting Weapon Brand, and because we're a new company and on a budget, I'm like, man, I don't know how to do digital media. So that's definitely a learning curve for me. And that's what I spend a lot of time on is trying to promote ourselves in the cheapest way possible. That's going to be the most effective way. So being that I was in media, all of my clients for the most part are in California. And when COVID hit, California was just hit real tough because their governor just shut it down. And a lot of them were not having events not only for a year, but for 2 years. And so my income was drastically reduced. And also another huge client of mine is a firearms company. They have about 30 stores in California. Well, they haven't had to spend a penny on advertising since pre-COVID because everybody is buying firearms and guns or firearms and ammo, and they can't even keep their shelves stocked. So a lot of my income had just gone. And Brian came down to, I was living in Florida at the time. I moved from California, and Brian came down to visit me, and he knew I was going to a country music festival. I'm always going to big events where there's hundreds of thousands of people. And he said, I want you to be safe. So, let me put on this lecture for you and your friends. So I put it on Facebook, and within 90 minutes, like 30 people had said we wanted to come. And I was like, well, crap, I only have parking for 2 people at my house. How are we going to do this? So we went to a local coffee shop, and the guy who owned it was a veteran. And I said, I'd love to have an event here. I don't have any money to pay you, but we'll be bringing people to your establishment. Would you have us? And he said, of course. And Brian came and he spoke to a bunch of my friends, and they all wanted more of what he was trained on, more information, more training. How do we get what he has? And so he was starting this in Ohio already. And I was like, hey, let's do this together. There were 30 people within 90 minutes who said they'd come. Let's try to sell tickets to the next one. So the next one, we sold tickets, and that was just over a year ago. And ever since then, we've just been rocking and rolling.
Wow. So what brought you into media, though? I mean, that's an interesting, and going to California, which I've lived in California. I wouldn't live in California ever again. That's
I know.
lots of reasons, right? How did that come about?
My best friend lived in California, And I went to visit her. She lived in Brentwood, California, which is a suburb of LA. And I was like, I always knew that I was going to get out of Ohio. I was just like, I had bigger things in mind for me, myself. And she lived there. I went to visit her. I got a job pretty much, actually, I went to visit her, came home 3 months later, moved out there, got a job pretty quickly and got my own place. And it was at a newspaper. And so that was kind of the start of my media career. And as that career progressed, I was getting bigger and bigger clients and making better relationships. And a radio station that I was working at flipped format. And I'm a country girl. I love country music. So my heart just wasn't really in not selling country music. Anyways, down the road, I went to work at an ad agency, and I was like, I can do this. Like, all I'm doing is the commissions that I'm making on this stuff. I'm giving part of it to these guys to write a check. And they did teach me a lot, but I was like, I can do this on my own. So I went out on my own in 2011 and have had a really great career up to COVID. And once COVID hit, it just kind of took the steam out of what I was doing. And I still do it today. I still have clients that I've worked with forever, and I'll still place their media buys and help them. But my focus is really Weapon Brand. It's so much more gratifying.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. As an IT guy, I like your website, by the way. I think you did a great job.
It's actually a work in progress, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, it looks really good. I've done web development for many years, so I think it hits the mark in terms of what you're trying to express in a website. So good job. So
that's all done with like very little education on how to do this.
Sometimes that's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
And I would say that probably wouldn't have been so easy 10, 15 years ago. I mean, the technologies that are available to small business owners to build things like that are much, much better than they used to be.
Yeah, exactly. If I don't know how to do something, I just look on YouTube, I figure it out, I put it on social media, who knows how to do this? And normally within a couple minutes, I have an answer to my question or can watch a video on how to do it. And so, I'm clawing my way through this, learning day by day. So.
Yeah, we in the IT field, which I'm in, we joke about the University of YouTube. You learn everything on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So, how did you meet? I know you're related, but how did that work out? I mean, you're cousins, correct?
Right.
I don't know my cousins like your cousins. So, what's that? How does that family connection go back?
Well, we're born 3 weeks apart, and our dads are brothers. Okay. So Brian and I grew up together, thick as thieves all through growing up. And then when he went to the military and he was out in the desert and I'm in LA, living my best life, we kind of lost touch a little bit because,
Yeah,
I wasn't going to the desert to visit him. So he did get to come to Ohio California a couple of times when he was chasing fugitives and taking them back to Ohio from California. So I got to see him then. And then it really wasn't until he was going through a breakup and he reached out to me and was just kind of looking for some, family support and someone to talk to. And he said, let me come down to Florida and just get some saltwater therapy. And hence a year and a little over a year later, we're both working 12+ hour days because of that visit. Yeah,
Brian. So how did it work out that when she said, "Hey, let's do this thing at the coffee shop"? What was your thought on that?
I'm Jeremy. I've taught in like wild places, So anywhere that there's going to be people showing up, and I'll be honest, if we had one person show up that evening, we still would have done the class, So and that was the primary reason I was coming down, other than just to get away from Ohio and all the catastrophe that happened then. So but man, if that stuff didn't happen, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I'm a true believer in everything does happen for a reason. But yeah, so we came down and I came down and we took that training that day, regardless of how many people were going to show up. And she's right, it blew up immediately. You know, there were a lot of people there were a lot more people there than I expected when I showed up, and then it just the ball got rolling from there. So it's pretty wild.
How did you start the company? What was the thought process behind, right? You had a successful career going on in Ohio.
So that's pretty interesting. You know, we were on a podcast actually earlier today, and I told this story, and I haven't told this story too many times, but it is an interesting one. I worked for the state for 21 years before I resigned, and they told me I was going to have to work for 32 years total. And I was just like, oh man, I mean, I don't care what job you have, if you, regardless of you love it or not, like that's just kind of that's a blow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was already going on in my head, but I just kept thinking, like, everything that I was doing for the state, I just kept thinking I could totally do this myself, you know, kind of similar to Jamie. And I wouldn't have as many strings attached. And to be fair, they really kind of just let me go with it. They let me recreate the whole system that they had, scrap the old one, and start fresh. So they were very supportive in that. However, there were always, of course, as you know, in that field, there's a lot of strings attached. So, but I kept thinking, man, I could do this on my own. So one of my mentors that I had, and trainers that I had, I reached out to him and I said, hey, you know, I'm getting ready to open this company, which right now is Weapon Brand, but this was years back. And he said, he literally called me a dumbass.
Oh, wow.
He said, yeah, he said, if you leave the job that you have now to try to teach self-defense to people, that's a dumbass move. And I'm like, I was shocked. I was put back by it. And I said, that's what you do. You're a multimillionaire. Like, that's what you do. And he said, yeah, but for 12 years, I did it out of my garage, making absolutely nothing. And he said, you have your dream job. What he did say was, he said, you know, if you just try to open up a self-defense company, and we'll probably get into this, I'm sure. He said, you're going to realize people don't want to learn self-defense. He said, people just don't, they can't accept that it'll happen to them. And the only ones that typically do it are, you know, very few forward thinkers that accept the fact it could happen. So I'm going to get some training to protect myself or my family. But typically what happens is you find the people that have had some type of an incident, or to their family or friends.
Right.
And he did say, you know, you have all these fitness certifications. He said, why don't you open some type of a training facility, some type of a gym in essence, and then just use it as a vessel in a sense. And what I did was, I did do that. I opened up Combat Athlete, which we did everything there. You know, we were very self-defense based, but we did it through fitness classes, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, different types of firearms training, things like that. So, but what I started, and you know, one of his quotes, he said, you're going to notice that if you have 500 clients, 400 of them just want to know how to make their butts smaller or bigger. He said, if you're lucky, and he was right. If you were lucky, you're going to have 100 that want to know self-defense. And I also believe, and thanks to Jamie, I also believe that a lot of that has to do with not just the instructor's knowledge base and skill set, but your marketing for it as well. And I could tell you that I wouldn't have been able to do it. Like, without Jamie, I would have been doing very, very small classes. And I honestly don't think, seeing what we do now, I honestly don't think that if I didn't have Jamie next to me doing this, and sometimes on top of me punching me, I honestly don't think that it would have flown like it did. So so I opened up that business in July 2018, and we started to run some self-defense classes. It started to pick up some steam, and that's right around when I contacted Jamie with tears in my eyes, with a broken heart, and said, I need to get out of here. I need some saltwater therapy, as she says, and I wanted to teach you and your friends some self-defense. It blew up. Her and I have always been like best friends, so you couldn't have a better partnership. So it just took off from there, Jeremy. It truly is a blessing.
So I'm familiar with the challenge you're talking about, right? Not a lot of people want to learn self-defense. I made my family learn my capabilities when from when I was a police officer. My daughter especially, right, had to.
Yeah.
So how does that go? How do you, Jamie, how do you market it to get people to show up?
We pull them in kicking and screaming. It's the most challenging thing I've ever done, because most people don't want to accept it. But I do a ton of networking, and once they come to one of our classes, which normally we'll give them kind of an introductory class, or right now we've started some boxing on the beach classes, which we don't make any money on. It's not really our focus, but it allows us to be out there in the community speaking to people, and then they see us and they realize that we're like legit and that Brian really knows what he's talking about. And he's very knowledgeable, he's charming, people love to be around him, he's funny. So once they experience us just a little bit, they give us referrals, they come to our more expensive classes, they refer us to their companies. And so that's basically how it's grown. Moving forward, hopefully we're going to have more advertising budgets to be able to do a lot more and to expand our reach. But right now it's really kicking and screaming every person we get in that door. So, and then they come back. I mean, normally once somebody comes to one of our classes, they're a client for life, because one, we have fun. It's a serious topic, but we still have fun with it. They feel empowered. Our slogan is be your own weapon. So they really do feel like, even after just one class, wow, if I was attacked, I would at least have some tools in my toolbox to be able to access easily and readily from taking this class. Our system isn't a system that you have to train for years and years and years and years to be able to use. It's easy to learn, easy to remember, and easily accessible in the time of an incident. So once we get them in the door, they're students for life.
And what's that look like, Brian? I mean, in terms of, I know the higher advanced stuff, right? The martial arts skills and all, but how do you get the beginners to go, yeah, this is something I want to know how to do and I want to know more?
Well, the very first, that's a great question. The very first thing that you have to make them understand is they have to accept the fact that it's going to happen, or that it could happen. We have a class that's called Personal Safety and Threat Awareness. That's our Creating a Weapon Mindset. And that class is solely to take away misconceptions of self-defense situations and create that weapon mindset. It's to help change that mindset into, I can do things to help protect myself and my family. Like Jamie said, I don't have to go to a jiu-jitsu class 2 to 3 times a week and spend $168 monthly. And instead, I can take things that some guy that invented it got beat up literally for years and years to learn how to show other people the easiest ways to do it and make it effective. And I think once they start to, and like Jamie said, once they're around us, and because it is a very serious topic, and I think that's why people shy away. But once they're around us and they see that we're just normal people, that we do have experience, but at the same time we relate to a lot of different people, and like she said, we have fun. So once they get that, they almost get like a buy-in. And she's so right, Jeremy. I really don't think we have one client that has taken a class and didn't come back for something else. And our referral rate is huge. So most of our clientele, they have been referred. They're typically not people that just see it and then show up. They're referred by other people. So I think that's hugely important for us to create a good rapport with especially new clients, for them to pass that on. So to answer your question, that's what it looks like, just getting that buy-in from them by changing their mindset and showing them those misconceptions, and also that it's easy. The stuff that we teach is easy. There's so many instructors out there that are showing stuff that they have this weekend self-defense class, and it's like you leave and you're like, I don't know if I could actually really do that. Well, there's stuff that we prove it day in and day out that if you've taken it once, we've created a mental blueprint by the way that we teach it that you're going to fall back to, and you're going to remember portions of it. And then the more you do it, obviously, the easier it is to access.
I'll mention, Jeremy, as well, that we reach out to a lot of different communities that we can help right now, a lot that we've been focusing on is the LGBTQ plus community. After, we're here in Florida and they had that shooting at Pulse nightclub in Orlando. And then they also just recently had one in Colorado. And so we've really been trying to partner with different community organizations, going on different podcasts and TV shows or YouTube TV shows, and just reaching out to different communities to try to help them, especially when they're in a critical situation like they are right now. So everyone's like, do you work with domestic violence shelters? Yes. Do you work with troubled youth? Yes. Do you work and the answer is yes, we work with everybody. Do you work with people who are disabled? Yes. We work with everybody. And so I think that's been part of our success too, is you don't have to be a fitness model or in super great shape like Brian is to learn our system. You can be in a wheelchair, you can have a walker, you can have a cane, or you can be a fitness model, or anything in between, and the elderly as well. So we do a lot of reaching out to different communities to try to help them that we know are a little bit more vulnerable to attacks.
That's interesting. So as you mentioned during COVID, right, the gun stores didn't need marketing as much, right? And because if there's a fear that came about from COVID and some of the events that immediately preceded it, some of the unrest in the country, has that helped people to, as you said, Brian, you got to get through that. It's almost like when you first are drinking alcohol. I'm going to use alcohol as an example. When you're first drinking whiskey for the first time, you're like, that is garbage. Who can even drink that, right? But you persevere, and then you realize, oh, that's not so bad. Same thing can be said. I hate to use alcohol as reference, but same thing can be said, like the importance of understanding how to defend yourself, or recognize the situation you're putting yourself in. You're putting yourself in an unsafe situation. Has COVID and those other events helped you with your, getting people interested?
A little. I could tell you where it didn't help was Combat Athlete. It certainly, they shut us down. Obviously, the cool thing about that though, that I have to mention, because for any of our members up there that are going to watch this, we stayed open because of our members. We stayed open because I was consistently getting phone calls, texts, and emails saying, I want you to still take my payment. We don't want this place to go away. It's special, and it really is. But from those people, what I think that this pandemic that we've, I guess I could say, made it through, man, it really did cause a lot of different fears, because it was the unknown. We all fear the unknown, and it was something new. It was something fearful for a lot of people. So I think when that happens, your brain starts to kind of go a little bit. And I do believe that probably did attribute to a little bit of our early success, because it was right after the pandemic started to slow down. And I think people were thinking, oh man, what happens if everything gets shut down? What happens if people are looking for food? What happens if we're going into survival mode? I need to know this stuff. So, and that's why the gun stores, all these gun stores, like Jamie mentioned, they're getting sold out of their stock. Well, I do think that probably did attribute to a little bit of our early success with people being fearful.
Yeah, I could definitely see, because not everybody's a gun person, right? There are.
Right.
I mean, my wife definitely is not a gun person. I love guns, but and guns in a good way, right? In safe.
Yeah, sure.
But she's not a fan. So, but what you're doing, right, doesn't necessarily have to include a firearm. It can.
Right.
Do you also include other, like, I don't know what stun gun laws are in Florida, but like, tasers or other personal defense devices?
Yeah, so we do talk about that, but we try to break up some misconceptions about what we consider secondary tools. Your primary tool, what we teach people, is what you see, what you feel, and then how you respond to that, how you react, and then learning how to react. First and foremost, trying to avoid the fight by what you see, accept that, and then move on. But if you can't, then what are the easiest ways, most effective ways that you're able to fight back, make that attacker feel like the defender, and then get out of the situation back to your family. However, and this is a pretty interesting topic that when you bring up about firearms, Jeremy, because just even our name alone, in the beginning especially, we had a lot of people turn away from us because they just automatically assumed that we were pro-gun, that we were selling, building, training guns only. And we try to, and this goes to your question with the secondary tools. I place a gun in the same category as a taser or a pepper spray because it's an extension of you. It isn't your hands. You've been born with your hands. You were born with your eyes. So those were things that we can now train you to use. That you already have the skill. We could just hone in on that skill. However, tasers and things like that, we explain to people that that's secondary because it's something you don't train on every day. I can eat a bowl of Fruity Pebbles every single day and not think about it, right? Not think about how to do it. But if I picked up a taser or a pepper spray, I'd have to, or even a firearm. And I've handled firearms for, my entire career and over half my life, but I still have to think about it. So that becomes
a stressful situation elevates that. Can you
Yes.
even think through that process, right?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people that would argue that, say, well, if you have the correct muscle memory, but man, how much, this, law enforcement military guy, how much training does one really have to? I mean, I was in every special operations type of team that you could imagine, and I still need training. So, I'm not too big to admit that. But with all these other measures, like, mace, pepper spray, tasers, the batons, people that they carry all these things and they think, well, I'm just going to be able to use this. That's a misconception. So we teach them against that, or at least against the thought that that's what they're automatically going to go to, and it's automatically going to work every time. As you and I both know, and Jamie for sure, these things they're a crapshoot. So, but what isn't is what you see and what you could actually believe in. So to answer your question, yeah, we do teach about it, but we teach that it's secondary, and we teach the best ways to handle it mentally, in a sense.
No, that's fantastic. I love that. I love that because you're right. I mean, there's some even when I was actively in law enforcement, we would not always trust that stuff. Right at the end of the day, equipment fails. Your rush to adrenaline is a factor, and that's worse for somebody like you said who isn't practicing for those situations. So I love that.
We give some of our clients an example because we get questions, and I've been getting these questions my entire career. But Jamie's not; she could answer every question now, right? It's not very often that she gets stumped by something, because she hears also just in the past year the same exact questions all the time. And we'll get a question something similar to, well, if I carry my gun in my purse, it's going to be easy to find and easy to use, right? It's like, well, if you put your phone in your purse and you used your phone probably at least 150 times today, if I called you right now, how fast can you get to that phone and how accurate can you be with that phone? Now let's talk about a gun, pepper spray, or a taser. How many times have you used that today? Hopefully none. And are you going to be able to get to that quickly and then be effective with it? Especially like you mentioned, sympathetic nervous system effects start to take over. It goes from fine and complex to gross motor skills. And if you don't have that muscle memory or that mental blueprint on what to do without thinking, you're in a tough situation.
Yeah. So as you guys have built the business, what are some lessons you've learned? And maybe it's on how you get to customers or how you're building your customer base. I'm curious, right? For people who are beginning a business, right? There are typical challenges.
Yeah.
What are some of those, and then how have you been able to overcome those?
So I could answer one for Jamie right now that broke my heart. It breaks my heart to this day, but I know now. She thought right off the bat, I can guarantee this is going to work. Man, this is going to be great. Everybody wants self-defense, and it was the absolute opposite. So, and I knew that, and I saw that, and I would see her get deflated and let down sometimes, and I'd have to, and she, it's a roller coaster as every business, but she tells me all the time, hey, things are going to look up. We're going to do this. We're really making it. We kind of have to be each other's cheerleader at times, and but I saw that from the beginning. That was a challenge. That was a challenge for me to see Jamie become deflated a lot of times, seeing the reality of people are just not interested in protecting their families. You know, they can say it all day long, but they're not interested. That's the wrong thing to say. They're not interested in seeking effective training to protect their families. They want to do it. They say they'll do it, but they don't take the measures to do it. And that was a challenge for me.
Yeah.
But I know I could tell you right now, Jeremy, Jamie has like a checklist of 100 things that are a challenge. and I'm one of them. I'm probably the top one.
Yeah. I mean, I think resiliency is important. You know, every day we hear, oh, I'm good, I don't need self-defense. New Yorkers are the worst. I'm sorry if you're listening from New York, but everybody from New York thinks they're a tough guy and don't need self-defense. People that already have their concealed carry license, they think that because they have a license, they don't need any training. And I was just telling a girlfriend today, I said, that's like having a driver's license, never having driven a car and thinking that you're fine. You don't need any drive time to actually know how to drive a car. So resiliency, I think, has been really important for us just to keep on going, and knowing that every single person that we touch is helped. I mean, that helps a lot because the job is really, really gratifying. Every job that I've had, I've loved, but you don't necessarily get the same reaction when you put on a good advertising campaign as to when somebody leaves your classes feeling empowered and feeling like that they can protect themselves if they had to. The texts and emails and phone calls that we get after every class, it literally is the only thing that kind of keeps me going. So that, and then I think consistency is super important. On the days where we don't feel like showing up, but we say we're going to be there, you know, we're there being people of our word. But the consistency with social media postings, you know, every day, even if I don't have time, I figure it out. I go through my list: Facebook, LinkedIn, Meetup, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Google My Business. So they pretty much get updated every day. And I think that that's kind of been a lesson too, is when you're not there, people are like, they forget about you. So you have to always be in their face. God, I could go on for days and days. That it's way harder than anybody ever thought. You know, I tell Brian all the time, if I knew it was going to be this hard, I probably would not have done it. It's so hard, but I love it and it's super gratifying. So we keep going. The support, you know, it's really hard when you think that your friends and family are going to support you, and they do, but it's not like, it's hard to say. I say a client will become a friend before a family or a friend will become a client. So
True.
So that's been a tough pill to swallow for sure. They all want to see us do well, but are they in our classes? You know, some are, some aren't. So those people that you really thought would be there for you and be your ride or dies aren't necessarily the people who are sharing your stuff, who are buying your merchandise, who are signing up for your classes, who are referring you. It's the people who have actually been to your classes that are doing that. So that's a tough pill to swallow. I could just go on for days and days.
No, that's interesting. Right. That's a challenge every new business owner has, right? As you're starting a fresh business, you hope that the people in your network that you know, and the ones who are especially close, are going to support you, and they don't always, right? Either they don't have applicability to the business you have, or they don't think they do, or you know, whatever, right? There's lots of reasons. We all make excuses for things we don't do.
Yeah.
So as you've gone through your careers and on your journey to this point, in starting this company, what's something that you've seen that you wish, like, we just did differently, right? It could be, I don't know, it could be the way we hire people, it could be the way people expect us to advertise, right? I know you're an advertising person, Jamie. I don't know, it could be whatever it is in your career. What's something you've seen that you just wish, if we'd come to you today and said, hey, you have the power to make us all reconsider that we're just doing something in a way that's not effective, what might that be for? I'll start with you, Brian. What might that be for you?
That's a difficult question, but one thing that would make our job a lot easier is if people didn't somehow have the misconceptions that they have.
Mm.
I think if they knew the truth behind a lot of different incidents and attacks, and how you not just physically but mentally and emotionally respond to something, I think they'd be seeking our services a lot more.
Mm.
But TV does. I always tell people misconceptions come from two different things. TV for one, seeing how you think things will play out, and then training. And if you don't have training, it's just life experience, which falls under training. So, and a lot of those things were misconceptions. So I think one thing that would help us a lot is if people just didn't somehow have those misconceptions that they have. But the other thing I could tell you, at least that made this is a totally different subject, but that made it, I guess, not so difficult, but it just didn't make it any easier was, man, and some people would hate me saying this, having a business degree. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, I went to school, got a business degree from Walsh University in Canton, Ohio, and I could tell you, Jeremy, I I haven't used that degree once. I have two businesses now, and when younger people ask me, what's your advice on opening a business? The first thing I'll tell them is, I have literally kicked in doors, hunted terrorists, hunted fugitives, assisted in putting death row inmates to sleep. I fought in a cage. I've been in countless operations, been in really scary situations, and nothing pales in comparison to the fear I had of resigning from something every day, getting a paycheck every other week, to opening a business and the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And when I thought, well, I have a business degree, I'm just going to fall back. The degree is great, shows that I did it, got a piece of paper. However, it really was not applicable to anything that I did owning a business. And maybe it was just my specific business, but I tell people all the time now, go learn psychology so you learn people.
Mm.
Finance wouldn't be bad. Learn a trade, go to a trade school, because owning a training facility, plumbing's going, electric's going, furnace is going,
Right.
and that I have to pay somebody for that. So, and I try to do it on my own, but being shocked and having a lot of water everywhere, you learn a lesson. So, that's one challenge that I had, thinking that I could fall back to just a 4-year business degree from a good school. It honestly, I hate to say it, it really didn't do a whole lot as far as what my business experience has been. So that was the challenge.
You won't get me to argue with you whatsoever. I have a computer science degree because I thought I needed it, and I hardly ever used anything I went to school for. I completely agree with you. And I've met a number of people, and there's actually a big movement in the IT space now for companies to hire and not so much emphasize the college degree anymore, especially with the current generation who are growing up with technology more than, I mean, we didn't, right? We had the telephone on the wire, right? We didn't have any of this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very interesting. What about for you, Jamie? What's something you would
Something that we've learned is, or something that I wish we would have done differently, is we kind of started, and, we still do it a little bit, but we did a lot of events that were open to the public. We're trying to sell tickets. We're getting people in there one by one, kicking and screaming, you really want to come. I know you really want to come. Instead of really focusing on the corporate trainings, which is where a company has a wellness program or just wants their employees to be safe. And instead of training 5 or 10 or 25 people at a time, now we have a contract to do hundreds of employees either at a time or throughout the year, and then going to their different locations. And so it's really, I think for myself, because I hadn't been in this particular sector before, I was afraid to make those calls to the bigger companies, to the large corporations that have thousands of employees. And I wish I would have just bit the bullet and done it from day one, because that's where we're at now. And we're doing more corporate trainings and larger groups. And it's definitely that ripple effect is really happening, because, you know, when we're training 200 people, they're going and telling their friends and families and other businesses that they know about it, instead of training 5 people at a time or privates. And we still do privates, and we still do small groups, and we still do events where they're open to the public, but it's hard to get people in there. But if their employer's paying for it, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, that's a lesson many businesses have learned, right? In terms of go where the money is, right? Companies have money. Individuals, sure, in volume, right? Volume sales versus large sales. That's interesting. That's a good lesson.
Yeah.
So what's next for the company? What's coming up as we go into the new year? What are your big plans?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because
taking over the world.
World domination. I was just talking to a girl who's going to do some publicity for us today about that. And I think our next goals are obviously more corporate trainings, but we're working on some digital programs so that no matter where you're at, you can buy our courses and download them, or become a subscriber and get access to our material all year long. And maybe that's for companies to, when they're hiring a new employee, or for their current employees, that they have a subscription so that they're able to stay safe. Because if you're not safe and you get attacked at night, you're not going to work the next day, which affects your company's bottom line. And then launching our teacher training program. We've been collecting interest up to this point, but it's really time for us to launch that for other people to be weapon brand instructors and franchise and open their own facilities.
That's amazing. Brian, any thoughts on the future?
Heck no.
Yeah, one day at a time.
It's day by day for me, Jeremy. I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I get beat up every day.
This is why Jamie's the marketing.
100%. She takes every word out of my mouth, and she makes it sound about 100 times better. So, but yeah, she's absolutely right. I think obviously the instructor development program is going to be pretty big for us, just because we're stretched thin. We're going 100 miles an hour every single day. We have some instructors now, but we really need to spread that out. And what I would really like to see over this next year, especially, is we start to kind of break through that surface of people knowing our name as the household name for self-defense and confidence, to be able to build their own empowerment through us. So we're already starting to be recognized in the Northeast Ohio area, and down here in Florida in the Tampa and St. Pete area a little bit. But I'd really like that to really start to spread for us. I'd really like people to see just even this diamond we have, or that name weapon, and not think that we're making guns, but think that we're making weapons out of people.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming on the podcast. This has been very enlightening. I love what you're doing. Big supporter of doing that sort of thing, and I wish you all the best. And I look forward to hopefully exposing through my audience some new people who can reach out to you. And I'll make sure to put web links and all that in the description.
That'd be awesome.
Put that out.
Awesome.
Jeremy, I just have to say, it's almost been an hour.
It's almost been an hour somehow.
Yeah, and we said, there's no way.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much
for having us, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.